Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is a story time, tales from a medical coder. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, I was asked to do a story time. What are some stories I have as a medical coder? So I hope you enjoy, and here we go. All right, one of my most favorite things to do as a medical coder is to do provider training, okay? And one of my other favorite things to do is to cook and do parties and things like that. So a few years ago, when we were transitioning from ICD-9 to ICD-10, there was a huge emphasis and a huge push on training and educating our providers. And so they actually blocked off time for us to be able to do this. So I had a partner at the time working in the clinic with me as well. She was another coder. And what we decided to do together was to do like a hot dog lunch. You know, we were going to do chili dogs. This was going to be something really simple. And we were going to do this co-presentation. And so we had all of the slides done, and we were going to make the slides that we do are very small in that we don't have like huge 30 or 50 slide packets, you know, to give to everybody. But what we did was we made like I think it was like a 15-page slide deck. And then we had examples of some notes that had all of the PHI taken out. So that way we can give examples of what is good and what could use improvement. So that way they could see an actual example of what we're talking about. So we had everything prepared. And the day of the presentation, my partner called in, so she ditched me that day. She didn't intentionally ditch me, but she was like, Blue, do you think you're going to be able to handle this all by yourself? You know, you're going to have to set up everything on your own. And I said, trust me, it'll be fine. You know, if it's one thing I can do, it's a party, you know. And so since we were having these chili dogs, everybody's already excited about the chili dogs. They knew we were going to bring something in, right? And they knew we were going to bring these chili dogs in. So everyone was like, oh, that sounds good, you know. So what I did was I set up everything. I got the crock pots going. I got all the chips out and everything. I got the sodas on ice. And so everything was all set up and good. And we were going to be prepared, or at least I was going to be prepared to do this presentation by noon. And so what everybody was going to do was come in and get their plate, get their food, and then we were all going to have this, you know, meeting in the conference room. Talk about a monkey wrench. So the conference room had actually been commandeered by another department. And so they were like, well, we don't have a place to meet now. And I'm like, okay, no problem. We can handle this. I said, we're going to meet in the little alcove, and we're going to have a fireside chat, basically. They go, the alcove. I said, yeah. So in the clinic, there is a little alcove that they have where patients usually would sit if they're waiting for a provider. And so it's a perfect meeting place for all of us because it was just the right amount of room. And what we did was have everybody bring their chairs, and we had like a little, just like a circle, like a fireside chat circle, you know. So everybody liked this idea. And so around 10:30 or so, one of my surgeons was going up to the OR. He's like, hey, Blue, you know I'm not going to be able to make this meeting. And he's like, and I'm really upset about it because everything smells so good. He goes, but do you think I can grab lunch now? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I got him all set up with his plate, and he's just like really excited. He's like, this is really nice of you and your partner to do this. And I was like, thank you. And he's like, why are you all by yourself? And I'm like, well, she's not here today. So I said, but it's okay. I've got it. You know, this is no big deal. We've got this. And so he said, okay, well, thank you. And, you know, I'll just, you know, ask you any questions if I have any, you know, from the slide that I have later on. So I was like, okay. So he got his plate and he ran off and and then got ready to go up to the OR. And so by then people start coming in, and everything is just laid out really nice in the office. And I got a compliment on the chili. They were like, wow, this chili is so delicious. It's so good, Blue. How did you make it? I need the recipe. It was actually a can of Hormel chili without the beans. Okay. So they were like, really? This is from the can? I'm like, yeah. And so anyway, it was good to me. And so it was good to everybody else, apparently. So as everybody's getting their plate, and I was I had all the packets ready together, and, you know, everything was all sorted out, and I went over to the area where we were all sitting, and I started passing out the packets as everybody was just eating and drinking and just having a good time and talking a little bit. And then we started the meeting. So normally when I'm with my partner, we both read from the slide deck and things like that. Well, I really kind of wanted to change it up, because I think that when you read from a slide deck, people start to get bored. So I wanted to see if I could do a little experiment. So I said, okay guys, we're gonna start this meeting, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna go around the room, or you can just start reading whatever you want to. Just read a slide and then let somebody else read the next slide, and so on and so forth. So there's enough slides for everybody. And I said, and either somebody starts or I'm going to pick somebody. So they decided to go all the way around the room, and each one of them read a slide, and then they would stop, and then we would review what was covered in the slide. This worked out perfectly, because what happens is that when different people are speaking, one at a time, obviously, it gives people something different to listen to. You know, the tempo of your voice and everything is different from person to person. And because of this, it makes the brain pay attention. So that was one thing that I noticed. Everybody was paying attention. And even though whenever my partner and I would do these co-presentations, people would pay attention, but you could also see them start to get distracted as well, you know, if one person was talking and the other one wasn't. So that's the thing. I wanted to make sure everybody paid attention at all times. So as we're sitting there going around this circle, this fireside circle, everybody's like, this is what it seems like a camp, like we're at camp. And I was like, well, this is great, isn't it? And so everybody enjoyed it. And the response from the slides was very interactive, because when one person would finish their slide, somebody would raise their hand with a question. And so I was able to explain, you know, the answers to their questions, things like that. This is what I like. This is what I like. I like when there's no prompting for, hey, do you guys have any questions? You know, talk it out. Let's talk it out. It was immediate. There was an immediate response to these questions. And so that was really amazing. And it was nice to see them like talking back and forth, like what do they do? What is their thought process and things like that. And so what I would say is, yes, that's good, or well, actually it's this way. And they're like, oh, so a lot of them were taking notes. So again, this is very interactive and a lot of fun. And so at the end of the meeting, it actually went over. And I was like, okay guys, we got to wrap this one up, because you know it's time already. And they were like, this was fun, you know. Because it was just us, and it wasn't like in a normal situation where you have a teacher at the front of the room and then you have everybody else sitting down. I was sitting down with them, and so we all just sort of had this, you know, round the room action, you know. And so that was one of the most fun days ever. And I told my partner when she came back, I was like, man, you missed a good time. I was like, everybody loved it. And so she's like, yeah, you know, I feel bad I wasn't here. And I say, it's okay, well, there's always the next time. So from then on, everybody always looked forward to those meetings, because it was just a really interactive way of just learning. And it wasn't just one person not really wanted to speak, everybody was speaking. So again, it was like an educational party, if you will. And those are the two best things ever, right? Education and parties. So I really like that. That was my most fun thing. One of the other things that I have noticed in my career is that what you think of your providers actually does matter to them. When you have built relationships with your providers and you are consistent with them, which I am always consistent with my providers, it doesn't matter. Like, what you see is what you get. But I am very upfront and I am very blunt. And I will let you know, if I don't like something, I will let it be known. I'm not rude about it. And it goes the same thing for people. If I don't feel comfortable with a person, they usually know. Or if I'm upset because something that they said or something that they did, they're going to know about it too. I'm not fake in any way. I will not smile to your face and then talk about you behind your back. The way that I am is what you see to your face is what you're going to get behind your back as well. And so because of this, that has built a lot of trust over the years with my providers. And the reason that I say what I think of them matters to them, I didn't think that it would at first, right? Because we started doing, my partner and I started this, but we had started doing these little awards, right? So at the end of the year, we would give awards to our providers, and it would be like MVP was one of them, best documentation in a trauma was one of them, and of course provider of the year was another one, and then just these random awards, but it was something specific for that provider. And then of course it got a little bit more competitive as everybody didn't get one. So it wasn't to leave people out, it was so that people would step up their game, and that actually worked. So because they knew that those awards were limited, they were like, okay, I started seeing a lot of really good documentation start coming out of my provider. So I was like, yay! So the first year that my partner and I did it, and it was just something we were just thinking of, like, what can we do to close this year out? Everybody's been so good. This was the first year of, the first full year actually of ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS, but for us it was ICD-10 CM in the clinic. And so this was our first year. So what were we going to do? And so one of the things that we did was the awards, and of course we came up with MVP. Well, of course, when you are in a clinic full of testosterone, they all want to be MVP, right? And so, but one of the providers got it, and he earned it. He legitimately earned it. It was because his documentation was impeccable. Now, he used to be the bar for documentation. I don't know what happened. He left and he came back, and his documentation just was not the same anymore after that. And he had been great for years, and then I don't know what happened. But he was really good at documentation, and everybody wanted MVP, and he was the only one who got it, obviously, because you can only have one MVP. And then I had another surgeon who didn't know, because he was on leave at the time when we were doing these awards. We would take the awards to everybody, to their desk, and let them know, what we were doing. And they were like, wow, this is really neat. This is awesome. And they were surprised. This was something that was new, and they weren't used to this. But we wanted them to know that their efforts were for something. And the little trophies that we got, they were from like, I forget the name of that one thing. But you can order them online. They're little cheapy things. But they're Oriental Trading, I think is what it was from Oriental Trading Company, right? And so we got this really good deal of those little trophies. So we did that. And so when we're taking it to them, we're letting them know, hey, this is what you got because, you did really good on your documentation or whatever. And so they really liked it. And the surgeon that was away had came back after the new year. And so we gave him his award. And his award was the Brofessor, right? Which means, of course, you ever see that commercial where they say, hey, bro, teen shake, hey, Brofessor? It was a commercial a long time ago. But it's just basically bros. Hey, bro, how you doing? Because they're always calling each other bro, right, in the clinic. And so, okay, Brofessor, because he's really smart. And so I said, okay, well, here's your award. And then he's like, oh, he goes, wow. He's like, well, thank you guys. He goes, this is neat. He's just looking at it. He's like, so am I the only one who got something? And I said, no, there was other awards. There was like best documentation. And he goes, uh-huh. And I said, an MVP and best documentation in trauma. He goes, wait, go back. He goes, MVP. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, why didn't I get MVP? I was like, well, he goes, no. He goes, wait, why didn't I get MVP? He goes, I didn't get MVP. And like, it's hitting him that he didn't get MVP. It wasn't that he wasn't a good documentation. He did really good at documentation, but it was always like, there was always a lot of back and forth for him to do anything. It was like pulling teeth. And whereas the other provider who actually got MVP was very receptive, and he improved his documentation tenfold, right? At any time anybody, any auditor looked at his documentation, they were really impressed with the way that he documented, because it was very detailed. And it was not detailed where note bloat, but it was detailed where it was, everything was substantiated in the note. And so, but with this provider who got the professor award, which was still a good award, I think, you know, but it wasn't MVP, and he wanted MVP. And he's like, I can't believe you wouldn't give it to me. And I was like, it's not about giving you the award, it's what you earn. He's like, well, I said, you don't like professor award? And he goes, well, I mean, yeah, I guess. He's like, but I would have wanted MVP. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, to try harder next year, you know? So he goes back to his office. He's like, okay. And so he was in the hallway, and of course he's talking with the guy who actually got it. He's like, well, who got it? And I was like, well, I can't tell you. He's like, no, you can tell me. Who got it? So one of the other providers told him, because he overheard him. And so he's like, yeah, you know, this is the guy that got it. He's like, what? He's like, I can't believe this. He goes, Blue. And I was like, hey, you know, at least you know it's fair. It's a fair award. He's like, it's not fair. So he just starts laughing. He takes off back to his office. So then the next day, I come into the office, and our offices are right next door to each other. And I hear a little knock at the door. And then I turn around and I look, and I say, oh, hey, good morning. And then he's like, hey, can you come to my office? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, what's going on? He's like, here. So he pulls out a chair so that I could sit there next to him and look at it, because he's got his computer screen up. And I noticed he's got his templates up, right? This templates for the different procedures that he does, right? And so he's working on these templates. And he's like, well, I'm working on these templates. He goes, sit right here. So I was like, okay. So I sit down in the chair, and he's like, well, I just want to know, is this covering everything? Because he had like blank spaces where like he could customize it to the procedure that he was doing. Like he had a blank space for the timeout, he had a blank space for like the medications and things like that, and of course the location and, you know, what it was. And he's like, so we're going over these things. And I said, okay, yes, you want to make sure that you have a slot here for the laterality, and you want a slot here for the diagnosis and things like that. So he's like, okay. So he's filling it in, and as he's filling it in, he goes, he says, I'm gonna get MVP next year. So I said, oh. I said, okay, all right. I said, we'll see. And then he's like, I'm gonna get it next year. I said, okay. So he's fixing up his templates, and you know, I'm really impressed at this point, because it really mattered to him that he didn't get MVP. And what my partner and I thought would be just a silly thing that we would do for the providers in our clinic, just as something as morale boosting. He's like, no, I really want to get this. I really want to be number one. And while that brought out his competitive side, it mattered to him that, you know, I didn't think that he felt that I didn't think that he was the best documenter in the world. I knew that there was room for improvement, you know, but I had appreciated all the things that he did do. And I said, well, you never want to listen when I say things. He goes, I do listen to you. I just don't do what you ask me to do all the time. I go, really? He says, well, and then so I said, okay, well, I mean, but that fact that he said that, I knew it mattered to him. And that said something to me that day, because again, it was just like, what I think of them matters. And I do give compliments, but I don't give compliments all the time where they think that I'm gonna, you know, I'm blowing up their ego. I'm not. If they've done something really spectacular, I do let them know, but I don't always tell them, because then it doesn't mean as much, right? And so whenever they do hear something about them, then they know it really does mean something. So about a year later, he left. That provider left. He went to another facility, and so he didn't make it to the next award ceremony. So he wasn't in the running anymore. But it was nice to know that he still tried really hard. And for the rest of the time that he was there with us, I mean, his documentation, there was no issues with his documentation, and it had actually gotten a lot better. So that was good on that one. But what you say will always get back to them. And that was another thing that I learned. So the nurses were asking, you know, is there any provider who needs to have their templates updated or anything like that? I said, no, everybody's really, really good. And I'm just going to make up a name. This is just a made up name. This is not an actual doctor. I'm just going to call him Dr. Ellis. Okay. But Dr. Ellis's nurse, said, is there anybody, is everybody okay? I said, yeah, everybody's okay. And then she's like, well, what about Dr. Ellis? Cause that was her doctor. And then I said, oh, no, don't worry about him. He's perfect. Everything that he's doing is right. But we just do need to work on some of these other ones, you know. And so she's like, okay. And then she's like, so he's really doing okay? I said, oh, yeah. I said, he is like, I mean, his documentation is impeccable. And he hadn't been MVP that year. But I said, his documentation is impeccable. He actually won the second one, you know. And so, so I went back to my office, no big deal. About a week later, Dr. Ellis is coming down the hallway. And so he comes to my office, and I think he was coming in for like a water or candy or something like that. And so he knocked on the door, he came in, and he's like, do you mind if I grab a water and a candy? Yeah, I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And so I'm working on my, I'm still continuing to work. And then as he's leaving, he's walking down the hallway, and then I hear him stop. He's like, hey, Blue. And I'm like, yeah. And I stick my head out my office door. He goes, my nurse said that I'm doing everything right, that you said that I'm doing everything right and everybody else is doing everything wrong. Is that what I heard? But he was like so proud and so happy. And I said, I didn't say everybody else was doing everything wrong. He goes, but I'm doing everything right. That's what she said you said. And I was like, he goes, is that true? I said, yes. I said, wow. I said, she can't hold water, can she? He laughs and he's like, well, that's good to know. And he was just so proud because he's like, I'm just happy because like, I don't know, like if I'm doing everything. I was like, well, you know, if you weren't, I said, you know, he goes, yeah, you would come and tell me because I know you would. And I was like, yeah, so you should know. If you're not hearing anything from me, it's because you're doing a really good job, right? He's like, well, that's good to hear. And he's like, wow, I can't believe it. Well, again, he actually ended up winning MVP that year. And he was very happy when he got MVP. He was like, yes. And so it was just nice to see them get so excited about that. And then, like I said, what you say about them matters. And you may not think it. And for me, for a long time, I didn't think that, you know, oh, my opinion, that this provider's really good at documentation. I didn't really think that mattered to them. I always thought that they sort of knew, you know, yeah, I know I'm a good provider and I know I'm a good documenter. And they don't. They don't actually. And when they say, Blue, you're the coder, you're the one who's going to tell me if it's wrong or not, because I don't know. And so I was like, oh. But when I started to learn that, when I started to learn that, yeah, they need my expertise in this too, because this is what I do, that helped me to be like, okay, this is going to be a lot better for me now. So with that encouraged me to learn more, so that I didn't miss anything, because I said my priority always for them is that they get the most credit that is available to them. You know, and if something is missing or we have to keep writing queries, I'm going to come and see you. And I do make that very clear. If I have to come and keep seeing you, we got an issue. And my queries, the amount of queries that I have to do is very low now because they know what's expected of them. I have made it clear. And when you make things clear and you're upfront and you're honest with them, you'll notice a huge difference in their demeanor with you. And it's all about building trust. And that's pretty much all I got time for today, because that time ran out pretty fast. But yeah, so those are some of my other favorite stories. I don't think I've told any of those stories with you guys. But anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. But thank you guys so much for joining me. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow. It will be my once a month live. It'll be a little bit earlier this month because of the holidays. So I'm going to run the lives about a week earlier. So yeah, I will see y'all tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.